After that call, I started noticing how often silence had shaped my life without me. Realizing it, I remembered all the moments back then when I could have spoken up and didn't. The landlord asking casual questions about unpaid rent. Friends joking about how mysterious my roommate was. Even my own family, who once asked why I always looked so tense whenever I went back to the apartment. Every time, I brushed it off. Every time, I chose the easier answer. What scared me wasn't that I lied. It was how natural it felt. For a long time, I told myself that none of it really mattered anymore. That whatever my friend was involved in had nothing to do with me. But after that phone call, I started digging through old messages, old photos, old emails I hadn't opened in years. And slowly, painfully, I realized how many warning signs I had ignored on purpose. There were messages asking for money that were never explained. Missed calls followed by rushed apologies. Periods where my friend would disappear for days and come back with rehearsed excuses. At the time, I called it trust. Looking back, it was avoidance. The worst part was understanding that other people had paid the price for that avoidance. People who didn't get the chance to choose whether to be involved. People who believed a version of events that I helped maintain. I started asking myself a question that wouldn't leave me alone. At what point does loyalty turn into complicity? There was a moment I remembered clearly. A night when someone showed up at the apartment looking genuinely scared. Not angry, not threatening, just desperate for answers. I stood there, listening from my room, knowing I could step out and say something, anything. And I didn't. That memory hit harder than anything else. I realized that lies don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they look like closed doors, like unanswered questions, like people deciding it's easier not to get involved. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable the truth became. I wasn't a victim of the situation. I was a participant. A quiet one, but still part of it. That's something people don't talk about enough. How being on the sidelines doesn't mean you're neutral. It just means you're invisible. I don't know where my former friend is now. I stopped looking after a while, because every answer I found only made things heavier. Some stories don't need endings to leave a mark. What I do know is this. Ever since that night, I pay attention to discomfort. That feeling you get when something doesn't add up. When a story feels rehearsed. When silence feels safer than honesty. I don't ignore it anymore, because the cost of staying quiet doesn't show up immediately. It shows up years later, in phone calls you can't forget, in questions you can't answer, in the realization that you helped build a lie simply by standing still. If you're listening to this and thinking of a situation where you chose not to speak up, you're not alone. Most people have at least one. But silence doesn't disappear just because time passes. It waits for the moment when it hurts the most, and when that moment comes, you don't get to decide whether you're involved anymore.